we're now having receptor sensitization issues. This is more down the road with addiction tendencies. We now have the inability to feel pleasure from just normal things, which is why your kid wants the iPad and doesn't want to go outside. It's that simple.
Mic drop.
It's seriously that simple. That is why the kid wants the iPad, is because there's no resistance to getting that dopamine. He's going to have to play 15, 20, 30 minutes using his imagination with other friends, family, before he maybe receives that. And it's effort and sweating and movement. And your brain knows that. Your brain knows that it's going to take way longer to receive that dopamine than just picking up that iPad and receiving it in minutes. And that's the scary part of the dopamine cycle. And that's what we're missing. We don't even know the effects yet. We think we do, but down the road, this might be one of the most addicting problems that we're going to have outside of drugs, alcohol, you name it. This might be even worse.
If you're working on something for longer periods of time, not even social media, you have to celebrate that accomplishment once you get to the end of it as well.
Yes.
Just so you can release that dopamine.
Comparison is the thief of joy. And I like that because it actually does a great job of showing you, if you dig really deep, and I love neurology, so that's why, but comparison is the thief of joy. And what it could mean is comparison is the thief of serotonin, which makes you happy.
Welcome to the Functional Code, your go-to source for decoding optimal health. Join Dr. Addy and Dr. Jace as they break down the science behind pain, performance, longevity, and more, making complex concepts easy for you to understand and apply in your life. Your journey to a healthier you begins with understanding the Functional Code.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Functional Code. We are excited to talk to you guys today about a new episode, how social media is changing our perception of the fitness and health industry and how we feel about ourselves. There are a lot of things that go on inside of our brain and our body when we are continually doom scrolling, comparing ourselves, all these other things. And there are a lot of things you guys need to know, even just about the fitness industry, especially on social media, and you maybe not are aware of. So as always, I am Dr. Addy.
And I am Dr. Jace. Say, question for you. When you're scrolling on Instagram, have you felt like you were failing at fitness? I know, I feel like I was, and there's a couple awesome people that I've followed in the past, but a majority definitely are. I don't know if they practice what they preach. It's actually interesting. Over 60% of fitness content on social media is misleading or outright just false, according to a bunch of studies, especially one in Frontiers in Psychology. So it's interesting to see how our opinions, our everyday case studies that we notice or train with people or teach people can have definitely some different points of view as we move into how everything's put together of the perception of social media, health, and fitness. So we're going to get into today the fitness influencers, dopamine addiction, AI influencers potentially taking over, which is going to be fun to go into that, and also different ways on optimizing yourselves out of dysfunction. So we're going to get into it. We're going to start off with raising the fitness influencers and pretty much the misinformation. So, quick fact. Study in 2021 from the Journal of Medicine Internet Research found that 70% of fitness advice on TikTok was inaccurate. And Doc, I'm curious to see what your mind thought is with this. Where do we go for the updated research? Where do we go for someone who you know and can trust?
That is tough. It is. I think there's a lot of people out there who are trying their hardest to find people they want to believe in and want to expect or think of as a leader in their space or industry, especially if they have a lot of fancy certificates and doctorates and things like that. So it's tough because I'll find myself following both sides of the spectrum, where there are a lot more, we'll call it science-based individuals who really focus just our maybe PhD background, right?
Yes.
Researcher background. And then you have the opposite side, which is maybe more energetic based, and they don't there's not a lot to actually measure or claim what they do is scientifically backed. And it doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad, but I think there is a blend of both in this world, and you got to make sure that you continue to listen to everyone with a grain of salt, because that's what's most important. I think if you tend to just lean one way, you get tunnel vision, and you maybe forget to at least explore or entertain other options when you're looking on social media. But always, when you're watching social media or learning about things, I would never take someone's opinion or information on social media as the god of all information. There's always going to be something, and you even look at this, I do this too with people that I follow and thoroughly enjoy listening to, and I really respect them. Even if you take a look at some of their posts, and one day they're maybe sharing great information, and other days they're talking to you about a supplement. And let's say it's just a very raw video, and it's just them talking about a supplement. And then you go behind the scenes and you realize that they have a affiliate program with this supplement, and you're like, oh, wait, so maybe they are pushing this product. And you have to think about that. You're like, why are they pushing this product? Is it because they really enjoy the product and they believe in it? Sure, that might be. But it also takes there's influencer bias now to it. And bias is not a great way to build scientific evidence. And so anytime we have bias, we already lose the ability to show that this thing that we're studying this research isn't going to be sound. So even if something is really incredibly well studied, but there's bias towards it, there's going to be less of an ability for us to really know if this is something that we should have for ourselves. So you got to understand there is always going to be bias out there. People are always going to try to be making money, whether you like them or not. These are just things that you have to understand. So if you trust this person and you've been watching them and you're okay with them peddling supplements at your face every day, that's fine. But I try to find individuals whose goal is to truly just share as much information with you as they can. And then on the back end, if they eventually have a product for you, it's not really salesy, and they're just trying to do it to help you. And I think even to think of some people off the top of my head, like Alex Hormozi was one person that I think, he wasn't necessarily a fitness influencer, even though he's been in this space. His goal was just to help you. That's what his goal has always been. And he's gained notoriety just because of how much people he's helped. And so those are individuals who they don't have a vested interest in making all this money off of you, which I think takes a lot of bias away from their product. And again, if they're just focusing on just helping you, you're going to find that information is more than likely a little bit more valuable and maybe less salesy or less, I don't know. It's tough too, because there are individuals out there who I'm sure you've bought their books, you've bought their supplements, and you're feeling great off of them, and that's all fine and good. But obviously we'll get to later in the podcast, what are the true things you should be focusing on in your life other than buying the next big thing on TikTok? Doc, what about you? How do you wade through the garbage on social media?
When I look at my thought process on picking up any information on social media, there's a bunch of different things I look at, and that's changed over the years. A lot of it is searching for knowledge of small pieces that I either didn't understand, or how certain movements or supplements or nutrition or anything like that plays into the grand scheme of training an individual or building a person up mentally, physically. So some of it is definitely on that side of things. Oftentimes, if you take a broad scope from a general person standpoint, when you look at social media, they're going to be looking for trying to save time. They're going to be trying to see who do they perceive is in the space that can help that individual. Sometimes it's the world-class bodybuilder, sometimes it's the doctor. I think whatever your goals are, you want to see and you want to follow the person that you feel can give you the best results, one, but then two, the person that you want to almost emulate, or whatever goals you want to succeed in that they've already accomplished. So I think that's another perspective that you definitely want to look at from that side of things. But let's take a step back. So for me, I look at things more from like a research scientific background, and I put everything through like my filter of, and this is what and how I understand the human body physiology. So my way of training is a lot different than most others. And I know, Doc, we've worked out a couple times in the last like couple weeks here, and it's completely different than when you see a person come in, they do just a general small warm up. We go in and we warm up the joints, we warm up different planes of motion, and then we slowly start ramping up the nervous system's intensity, do maybe a 1, 2, 3 main lifts, some accessory work, and then deload off ramp, and then some contrast therapy.
Right.
So,
and we talked about how many people come into that gym, just start putting weight up, do that 5, 6 different times, and then leave. And you do that continually, you're gonna break a lot of body parts down doing that. But what do you see on Insta all the time? It's 5 best shoulder workouts for your next lift. And it's just them doing 5 lifts. So what does a person expect? Perfect, I'm gonna go to the gym, I'm gonna do those 5 lifts, I'm gonna go home.
yes.
Not anywhere do they talk about warming up. Do they talk about how to rehab after? I like to do a lot of rehabilitation movements after I get done working out too. So, no, I totally agree.
Yeah, and that goes into my second point. When you look at the fitness influencer side of things, have they had injuries in the past?
For sure.
Is that, if you keep following this individual, there's a good chance you're going to probably have some injuries. And then that goes to the point that you just made there, the warm-ups. And most people, especially if they've been in the space for a while, I would assume they warm up. But I'm sure there's some that don't, and just get right into it. Time could be a factor, and that's where you start noticing, especially if you're following that individual or those group of people, that how does your body feel afterwards? Do they talk about the recovery, rest state, just as much as the warm-ups, workouts?
Right.
And I think that's just as important from the fitness and health side of things. And then take a grain of salt with some people that are more on the nutrition side of things. One, do they look like the bill of health themselves?
Seriously though, like that's a big question. And it's okay to judge that for yourself.
Of course.
I'm not saying judge the person, I'm saying judge the
Results.
judge the results. Because it's super important.
Yep. Yeah, that stuff doesn't happen overnight. And
No.
you can see the people that look healthy, feel and have the energy of health, those are the people that naturally most people emulate towards, but yeah.
But if you have a half-fit man pushing a product down your throat and you're thinking, is this really the health guy I want to listen to or girl? You got to ask why, and you got to ask the questions of you protect yourself. And there are plenty of longevity experts out there or biohacking experts, and you look at them and they're not all built the same. And you got to really think, okay, who would I want to listen to in a room about my health? I want to probably start with the one who looks the most healthiest, right? I would want to have someone who practices what they preach. I'm not going to have someone who's just in it to push a supplement, make some money, and not actually do anything for themselves. It's just a huge confliction.
And even when you look at doctors or physicians that you want to follow or help you get better too, we were at a conference, a weekend, 2 weekends ago, and I'd say probably over half of the room, maybe close to half of the room, didn't look like the bill of health.
Overweight.
Yep.
Very stressed.
Yep.
I could see bags under most of their eyes. That's the industry, unfortunately. But are you going to listen to your cardiologist who eats heck with a huge stomach and probably is about to have a heart event himself?
Yes.
Or who are you going to listen to? And it's okay to get heart advice from someone who isn't a cardiologist.
Yeah.
And that's probably another podcast, right? But these are important things because there are some incredible individuals out there who know how to manage your health a lot better than a doctor does. And we're doctors saying this.
Yes.
We know that. It's just a matter of who's the person out there pushing a $3,000 program that you can buy that was saying that it'll change your life, save your life, those kinds of things. What we know, and it's always known, is sleep is important, getting proper diet is important, exercise is important. Those are the things you should be investing your time and money into at the foundation.
Yes.
Everything else is just added benefit if you obviously can afford that. But a good example would be Brian Johnson. He's the person who sold Venmo, and he's almost a billion. I'm sure he is a billionaire by now, but I think he sold Venmo for $800 million. And he's now spent his life creating what's called the Blueprint diet, or the Blueprint program. And it's reversed his aging quite well.
Yes.
However, you look at him and now he's selling a lot of the things that he's been doing, which he's been doing them, and he's got the objective data to show that it's making a change in his life. But he spent $2 million a year on that program. Okay?
Okay.
Practicality now.
Yep.
Yes, it's amazing what he's done. But does his effort, spending $2 million a year on his body, translate to a supplement that you can buy now? No, not in my opinion. Yes, listen to me. Look at my body. Look at what I've done. I spent $2 million. I know what I'm saying. Buy my supplement. Absolutely not. They've taken an incredible amount of work, and impressive work, but they're switching it now, and they're using it to manipulate you. And I don't agree with that. I don't agree with taking that and using it as leverage to sell a product.
100%.
Stand by your work, and then go and shout what you did.
Yes.
What did you do to get there? Don't take that shortcut now to get money because you put the work in, and you don't expect others will either, and they're just going to listen and buy from you. And I don't think that's very fair.
100%. You got to build up that foundation.
Yep. Liver King did that.
Yes.
Liver King shortcutted to getting that body and then preached that he did it off of supplements alone and all that, and people made so much money. And we know he was spending $12,000 a month on PEDs and steroids and tests and all that. And then sat up there and said it was from eating liver and supplements and working out. And people bought it. And it's not fair. That's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate.
And yeah, I don't necessarily agree with the route he took. And I know now, and we've discussed him a little bit in the last probably few podcasts-ish, to where he's living a healthier lifestyle than most right now. To extent, I don't know how much of it is 100% real based on his previous actions. So it's hard to completely buy in and have that trust factor.
Right.
And so when you look at, I guess, us having this conversation, it's the trust of whatever they've done or said in the past, it still can resonate, and people still will remember that for years and decades to come. So that then comes to how genuine a person is. That comes to how caring, motivated someone is to help more people and the masses above themselves as well. Yeah, interesting point. But yeah, build up that foundation and pay a very close attention to who you are listening to. Take with a grain of salt, get multiple opinions.
Yep.
Yeah, all the stuff I feel like we know, but definitely need a reminder on.
It's so important to refresh on.
Yes, and let's go into a little bit of an engagement, I guess, idea. We're going to go over a couple different phrases, and then Doc, you can let me know, is this BS or is this scientifically backed? And if you have any, by all means, we can bring it up. But I guess I'll start off with the first one. Drinking lemon water burns belly fat.
Yeah, and I know the answer to this question. I'm curious if everybody else listening does as well. I know that most have heard the fasting, maybe a fasting diet where you're just going on water. You can add a little lemon to it to maybe improve the burning of calories or something like that. But I know this one is BS just because that is something that I've looked into as far as why, or what, I guess what would be a very quicker way to burn calories. And it's not necessarily what can you add, it's just what can you go without. And if you look across all diets, the only thing that you really notice the same trend across everything is caloric restriction, and that's it. If you can lower your calories, 99% of the time you're going to lose weight. I don't care what you added to your water. There's everything else. If you can sustain it for a consistent period and you're in a caloric deficit, that you will lose weight. That's pretty much it.
You're looking for those big chunks, those big movers that can move a needle instead of those small little nidbits.
I love that. Great point. Great point.
Okay, so I guess next one, putting a pinch of sea salt on your tongue for 5 seconds is the fastest way to hydrate.
Someone will look at that and think, what are you talking about? But if you've been listening to our
Yes.
podcast, you would know that isn't BS and has some scientific backing. Doc, do you want to talk on that one quick?
Yeah, and once we first found out, that was through our hydration podcast. And ever since I found out about that, anytime I feel like tired in the morning, I use this. Anytime after workouts, going into a workout, it actually works incredibly well. You almost get a sense of, it's almost better for me and a better, quicker feeling than energy drink. Salt on the tongue.
Yeah.
5 seconds.
Yeah, I like Celtic salt is great. It's got not only the appropriate electrolyte balance, but a lot of minerals too. That one's great too. If you guys don't, if you're gonna choose a good salt product, you want to make sure you probably go away from table salt too. But Himalayan salt, Celtic salt. I'm trying to think of even some other ones you could do, but
Yeah, I know those two. I think Celtic sea salt has about 92 minerals.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then Himalayan sea salt has about 85. So
Okay.
they're still up there.
Yep.
Where table salt has only 2. But that's where you have to replenish those electrolyte stores, and no other better way than natural minerals coming into your body that you're depleted of. So,
sure.
Yeah. All right, and then Doc, you're gonna have fun with this one. Distilled water is the healthiest water for you.
there are people out there who drink distilled water like a cult, man. It's crazy. They won't go and buy anything else. And then there's people out there who still thought distilled water, if you drink it, will kill you. I don't know how these mixture of myths or things have come about, but obviously that's not true. And it's tough we really did try to argue what the best water was on our hydration podcast. We came down to, if we were going to choose truly what is the most safe in a manner of health for you, RO filtered water is going to really remove everything that, and obviously, I don't know if our podcasts have come out yet, but we've been talking plastics, we've been talking chemicals, a lot of all those things yet. This week might be coming out. But these are other things that you got to worry about too, removing. And filtered water really does the best job at taking out all those things that you should be worried about in a more of a safe manner for your health.
But still keeps a little bit of minerals in there as well.
And then we talked about what you should be doing if you are having RO filtered water. Please try to add some mineral drops to it so that you can still make sure you're getting those, because that's important for hydration as well. But yeah, it's interesting to continue to sit here at that.
All right, so we're going to get into, are people over optimizing health and missing the basics? And I know we've already been touching on this a little bit, but there's a few small things that we definitely need to add into the equation. Consider this. A Harvard Medical School study found that people who track health metrics like sleep, steps, macros often experience increased stress and anxiety, leading to worse health outcomes.
That's interesting.
It is interesting, because I know anytime you focus on a target, 99 times out of 100, I feel like you're going to hit that target. However, if there's overbearing amount of things that you're keeping track of, then I could see the anxiety taking a factor. But yeah, I'd be curious to see with this study of what some of the methods were with that. But I think a lot of this comes back down to that fundamentals, that foundation, the sleep, whole food consumption, movement, stress management. Those are all top tier every day.
And going back to this study, I would look at this and say, how can we actually set a target for our health? And what does that look like?
Yes.
Is the target to get the highest number rating score on your sleep tracking device? Or is it to feel better and refreshed when you wake up?
Yes.
Is it to count as many steps as you can on your tracker, or to not have soreness when you wake up? Is it making sure you're getting every bit of protein that you need, or is it to feel really good after eating? There are a lot of targets that we set that are maybe not the right target. And we all know that you at least need something to aim for.
Yes.
So I understand those who are trying to use these health metrics to improve their life. And that's maybe not to discourage or dismiss you from doing that, but also make sure you have a target of feeling good and showing a positive outcome other than just getting your scores high, because those don't always equate to feeling better. Yes. And that's where I think this study probably did a good job of showing that they were shooting at a target, but they missed the true mark of where they needed to go, and that's unfortunately where a lot of people who are putting out information on social media are telling you this is the greatest new app you got to buy, and this is what'll help you track this and track this, and you're thinking that's a good target for yourself. But again, when we're about to get into what is the true targets and things that we should be focusing on fundamentally: sleep, whole foods, movement, stress. You're going to talk about that's everything.
100%. And that almost goes back to the longevity paradox. And I know you've brought this up in the past, Doc, of some of the longest living populations happen what's known as these blue zones, where they don't necessarily track the health metrics as much as a focus, but they look at more of the consistent habits. And that's where a lot of this will come back down to. Are you able to sustain a movement practice for years on end? Yes, you may not have the exact consistency of 4 days a week for 5 years straight,
Yeah.
but give yourself grace as you're creating some of these simple habits. Doc, I don't know if you want to touch on any of the blue zones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's important that people remember what those habits are and how that looks as far as, I liked how you said it, move the needle moving. And the biggest needle movers in those societies are community.
Yes.
They live in a community, and they're constantly interacting with each other. They're constantly doing activities with each other, whether that's pickleball. I don't know if it's pickleball. It is. A lot of them play a lot of games together. I know that was one place, I think, in the Mediterranean. I don't know if it's shuffleboard or there was something like that.
Yep.
A consistent whole food diet. And it's not even something that you would expect to be that crazy healthy. I think a large a part of their diet was rice and sweet potatoes.
Yep.
But it was just that mixed in with light amounts of lean protein, some beans, legumes, and that's it.
Take out some GMO.
It wasn't kale shakes. It wasn't kale shakes every day with superfood powders, and they're making sure that they're getting their bits of NMN and taurine and spermidine supplements. Like they're not pushing the needle that way.
Yep.
They're doing it with laughter, joy, community, whole foods, proper amounts of exercise, and avoiding ultra-processed foods, sugars, stress. Those are the needle movers. And that's where a lot of people miss that target, like we've been talking about.
No, I love that. No, that's amazing. And this is where I think a good challenge is for those that are listening. If you're one who tracks any type of health metric, take a day to 3 days off. DM us in the comment section below. What is your experience? How was it? Did it change your perspective? I know I did this, gosh, it's been a while, but I've done this for probably a good solid weekend. And it actually changed my mindset of, yes, I want to monitor all these health metrics, especially like for my Whoop, for certain types of foods I eat, the amount of water I drink. And instead of looking at it from that side of things, just live, and naturally, once you pick up these habits, your body will naturally perform certain actions, filling up your water bottle, bringing your water to work, naturally picking certain types of foods, meals for the week. So once you start noticing yourself picking up some of these habits, maybe let's take your mindset off of completely zoning in and tracking, and going back to what Doc said of how do you feel with the practice you're in? Are you able to live and experience life to the fullest? And I think a lot of that will come to helping the body.
And if you're just getting into this and you've been told that you needed to track this and this, you're going to get exhausted. And you're going to burn out. And you're not even going to get into the fun parts of seeing the results just because you've focused so much on tracking your metrics that you forgot to have fun and enjoy this process and journey. And you're going to need to. This is a big step in a lot of people's lives, and let's not make it any more harder than it is going to have to be.
Yes, absolutely. And that's where, as we're changing topics here, when we look at social media and influencing ourselves and our health journey, one of the biggest factors that everyone needs to be aware of is how dopamine plays into the addiction process for social media.
Yeah.
I think it's good to know when we are changing these things, the dopamine, it's a chemical within our body that can help change of where our pursuit is of our attention, whether that's, are we keeping scrolling on social media? Do we find something? You stop on a post, you find something you like, and you spend some time, maybe you dive into who this person is or this product is, and you spend time there. Those small circuits of what your actions are actually, what you're performing, go down to a small circuitry and chemical basis to where if you're able to understand that, you're able to then bring attention to your everyday habits of scrolling consistently. And we'll get into different ways that how you can revert your attention from that outside of it so you can break some of these bad habits as we go through. Yes, so dopamine, it's pretty much the reward chemical, but it also has a dark side if you don't know how to use it. So I'll get into, actually, Doc, let's do this. Let's have you dive into some of the stuff that you found with the dopaminergic pathways, the reward systems, and then we'll unbox this beast, if you will.
Yeah, and I tried to make it, I guess, as detailed, but I'll try to go through it quickly to not bore you with all of the anatomy. But it does make a lot of sense when you try to break down the brain and how our bodies work in relation to when using social media, when you get into doom scrolling, when you start comparing yourself, and all the brain chemicals and neurochemistry involved in this process. And it's a lot of negative feedback loops, and you get sucked into this. And it's easy to get addicted to the dopamine cycles that we have wired in our brains already using social media, and getting all these small pleasures from watching people accomplish things on social media isn't even of yourself, but watching things that are being accomplished in front of you in a short period of time, time-lapse videos, all these things, having someone have a video showing them work out 4 days a week for over a year or two, and then seeing the change at the end, and that's just it's a bombardment drive of dopamine, and it's great for that person, and I'm not saying that's not something you should be doing, but we need to recognize the chemicals involved watching something like that. And how do you maybe go about this in a different way? There are a few things that are involved in the reward system dopaminergic pathways. So the number one is called the ventral tegmental area, which talks to the nucleus accumbens and also the prefrontal cortex. So what happens when you are scrolling on social media, dopamine is released from this area called the nucleus accumbens, and it's reinforced and wants you to continue doing that, because what it does is it excites a bunch of neurons in your brain from the prefrontal cortex, and that is then sending another loop down to continue to release, and it wants you to continue to do that, and that is going to be your doom scrolling mechanism, okay?
And that's where habits come in.
Yes, it's trying to strengthen that. It wants to continue to excite and release, and it's strengthening this compulsive behavior that your habit. It's trying to form a habit. It wants you to, because it likes it. It knows why dopamine, as you're released, it wants to continue to have that. You feel good. The brain knows that. So why wouldn't it want that for have you continue to do that? Now, this chronic dopamine spike, though, activates what's called CREB, which produces dopamine receptor sensitivity over time, requiring more intense stimuli for the same pleasure. We know that's a dark path, because that requires you to scroll longer to receive the similar, reward, or it just requires you to watch much more dopamine stimulating videos. You see a lot of this with pornography as well. If you're watching a certain video, then you're going to need maybe a more kinkier or more crazier video to release that dopamine. And then you get stuck in these chronic loops. And now it takes a lot for you to release that dopamine. And that's a scary thing. Lastly, once we get chronic dopamine spikes, CREB activation increases what's called dynorphin, which suppresses dopamine output, leading to decreased motivation and anhedonia, which is an inability to feel pleasure from normal activities. So basically, if we've gotten really far down the road and we're now having receptor sensitization issues, this is more down the road with addiction tendencies, we now have the inability to feel pleasure from just normal things, which is why your kid wants the iPad and doesn't want to go outside. It's that simple.
Mic drop.
It's seriously that simple. That is why the kid wants the iPad, is because there's no resistance to getting that dopamine. He's going to have to play 15, 20, 30 minutes using his imagination with other friends, family, before he maybe receives that. And it's effort and sweating and movement. And your brain knows that. Your brain knows that it's going to take way longer to receive that dopamine than just picking up that iPad and receiving it in minutes. And that's the scary part of the dopamine cycle. And that's what we're missing. We don't even know the effects yet. We think we do, but down the road, this might be one of the most addicting problems that we're going to have outside of drugs, alcohol, you name it. This might be even worse.
That's why you need effort in order to feel whole.
Yes.
You have to put the work in. Like, our evolution has got us this far to make us who we are today, based on hunter-gatherers, based on working hard in the farms for just a small little bit of yield to support your family and small community. And that's where, and even if you're working on something for longer periods of time, not even social media, you have to celebrate that accomplishment once you get to the end of it as well.
Yes.
Just so you can release that dopamine dynamic phase, if we will. But understanding that is important. So
the recognition of that.
Yes.
Yeah. The next system involved in this process is called self-referential and default mode network. So what happens is when we have this serotonin dysregulation that goes on after a while with either our mood change, addictive changes, those kinds of things. When we have reduced serotonin in what's called the DRN, it leads to increased self-criticism and negative self-comparison. So now we're getting into this other stage now, after we've been comparing ourselves on social media after about 15 minutes. Now we're reducing serotonin, we're starting to become more critical, and we're negatively comparing ourselves. And I love the quote, comparison is the thief of joy. And I like that because it actually does a great job of showing you, if you dig really deep, and I love neurology, so that's why, but comparison is the thief of joy. And what it could mean is comparison is the thief of serotonin, which makes you happy.
Yes.
And truly, when you start comparing yourself, there's never a good outcome. There's no point. Because like we just talked about, these individuals out there are either cheating to get to where they are, cheating or using shortcuts and lying about it. Maybe this is a better way to phrase it. Or they're just not telling you the whole picture. They've been doing it much longer than they tell you it'll take you.
Yes.
They did it for 5 years, but they have a 30-day program for you, right? And that is it's gonna drive you nuts. And you gotta make sure you protect yourself from those kinds of sales tactics.
And Doc, the only thing I bring up with that comparison, that quote that you just brought up, would be, I remember in the back of my mind, Matthew McConaughey said that the only person he's comparing himself to is him 10 years in the future.
I love that.
I think that's probably the only caveat that can benefit all your systems. If you look at, and you also have to have the motivated mindset as well too. But besides comparing yourself to yourself in a forward-looking manner, I think that your statement definitely holds true.
And I love that is the only person you should be comparing yourself to.
Yes.
Who you were now and who you are going to be in the future, because that's the only person that matters.
So true.
And I love that.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. So this negativity increases excess glutamate, which is an excitoneuratory compound in the brain. And in the DMN, the default mode network in our brain, it causes overactive rumination and fixation on unrealistic fitness standards. So now we're self-criticizing and we are now ruminating, meaning we're thinking about it all the time, and we're fixated on unrealistic fitness standards. That is called orthorexia. And if you guys don't know what orthorexia is, it's an incredibly unhealthy addiction to healthiness. And that's something that I learned about a long time ago from another doctor. And what's really scary is the person who tries to be so healthy that they're incredibly unhealthy. And that person would be and this was just an example. We had a patient who read so many fitness books that they couldn't eat anything. They were so scared because of the person who was saying, and I'm not going to shout out every fitness influencer that I hate out right now, and I don't want to just start doing that, but vegetables have defensive compounds in them, and therefore you should not be eating vegetables, and they're going to harm you. And then you have individuals who saying too much red meat is going to be causing heart issues, please avoid red meat. And she literally had it in her mind that there was nothing good out there to eat, and she put herself into this orthorexic state, and she was losing weight, and she was unhealthy, and she, I think, landed on a few different things that she was eating every day, but she was so malnourished. And that is another thing that we need to focus on too, because you change spaces now into the fitness industry. How many people are out there touting doing workouts this way versus this way versus this way, and now you get into that gym and you don't even know where to start, and you're like, I want to get fit, but I don't know how the hell I'm going to do it. And it puts you in this just unrealistic fitness standard of, all right, I saw this person do this, look like this. I want to do that, but how do I get there? Shoot, it's been 30 days and I don't look like this guy who's been working out for 10 years. Maybe I should just quit because I don't think I'm ever going to look like that. You're only putting yourself in a hole starting like that. And if you can just understand that it takes a lot longer than you think,
Yes.
and a lot more money you're probably going to have to spend, time, effort, yes, but you should never feel bad about continuing to work on yourself.
Every day.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest thing that people need to take away from that.
I love that.
Lastly, social comparison reduces BDNF, which we've talked about before. It's brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which helps with feeling alert and cognitively there and mentally well and less fogginess. And impairs brain plasticity, making it harder to reframe negative thoughts. You're going to just have them more and more often. Again, so heightened self-criticism, impaired emotional regulation. The next is the stress system, HPA axis. This is maybe a more common one that people understand, which is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This is where how cortisol is released and how stress can impair that, those kinds of things. I know a lot of people has heard about that before. So the PBN of the hypothalamus releases CRH, corticotropin releasing hormone, which activates the HPA axis, leading to cortisol release. Now, the locus coeruleus, which I think I'm just going to use abbreviations from now on because I don't think you guys really care about the names of the brains. I know I don't. LC triggers noradrenaline, which heightens stress, anxiety, and vigilance towards social comparison. Chronic stress suppresses GABA, making it harder to turn off intrusive self-critical thoughts, which is just another part of this. When we have chronic stress, higher cortisol and noradrenaline causes persistent anxiety, poor sleep, increased social withdrawal, and then the ACC activation makes even smaller criticisms, lack of social media engagement, feeling socially painful. The next area, social validation, serotonergic pathways. Again, we talked about the serotonin pathway, but when oxytocin is how it normally is released, modulating social bonds, self-acceptance, there are unrealistic comparisons that can reduce its release. When we have less oxytocin, now we're not feeling as connected to the world. Repeated likes, comments, these are reinforcing social approval as a primary reward, but dopamine receptor desensitization leads to a greater sensitivity to social rejection. And so let's say you're getting to a point where you're now sharing a bunch of things online, but you're not getting the feedback that you'd likes, comments, those kinds of things. And they've even shown that you getting a notification on your post has a 300% increase in dopamine. Like,
Damn.
It's instantaneous for some people. And when we're not getting that, we are now thinking, what are we doing wrong? And I'm not as good as everybody else. And I'm not getting as many likes as my friend from the other class. And
Especially want that validation from
Yes.
others. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And it's tough too, because in a relationship, I've read a lot about the psychology of this too. And I'm going to break this down in facts before people jump on me. But women are DM'd thousands times of more than men are. And we know this. We've done studies and showed this, okay?
Yes.
I'm going to use this in the frame of that men versus women point of view because trust me, I have the objective data to back this, but men are not DM'd nowhere near as much as women. The social validation that women receive in 15 minutes from likes, comments, all those things, a single man can never give her, ever. We as one man to the relationship could never give her that amount of validation in our lifetime that she can receive from an hour or a week of likes, comments, DMs, all these things. So that is a huge issue too, because now we have this connection problem that I just got done talking about. And we don't have the ability now to, relationships we've talked about on our past podcasts too, friendships, it's just become harder and harder to get what you want out of the relationship. But when you're allowing social media to rewire and reframe your brain that way, you're not going to get that out of a person. You're only going to want that from your social media and from the validation of all the other amount of people that are sending you all these things. And so if you don't recognize that, it's going to mess you up.
Which is why people don't go out to social gatherings.
Yes.
Why they just stay inside. They enjoy their alone time.
Yes.
Because all of it's getting funneled on social media.
Yeah, and it's sad. It's super sad. And this is why I'm saying it's a much bigger epidemic than we even realize.
Yes.
And it's truly breaking us apart and separating us and making us feel all these awful negative things. And it's forming these terrible negative habits, feedback loops. I could go on and on. The last two I'll just briefly touch on is the habit formation addictive cycle. That again is just every interaction reinforces these pathways in the brain, strengthening this habitual checking. It's reinforcing this kind of compulsive behavior. And of course, it's just continuing to suppress the cycles in which we receive pleasure, now making us wanting it more and pushing us to try to get it more often so that we can get that pleasure. And then lastly, body dysmorphia circuit. Body dysmorphia is just feeling different in our body about how we should look or feel. And it is sometimes, it can happen in individuals who look incredibly fit, but they're comparing themselves to the next fittest person that they see. And they think that, they look like crap when they're chiseled and they're, 3% body, 4% body fat, but yet they're looking to that next fittest person and they're like, I got to do better. I look like crap and all these other things. So, and that's just a pathway where this low serotonin continues to heighten body dissatisfaction. When users expect to see progress in their own body but don't, dopamine error signal amplifies this dissatisfaction. Now there's poor GABA function, which causes overfocus on our bodily imperfections. And now we're continuing to just focus on the slightest, smallest inconsistencies in our bodies, making us feel like we're not getting any gain in the gym, and we're, instead of maybe growing, we're always looking just 1% less worse than the next person, and you're not actually tracking the true, gain over a year or two that you've actually had in the gym, and it's just going to continue to push you away
100%
from that gym.
And that's where you look at yourself instead of others and stop that comparison. So everything we've touched on has many different points of view, outlooks, but when you look at it as a whole, you're gonna need effort, you're gonna need time, you're gonna need energy, and there's gonna be ups and downs as you get better, but just knowing that and then taking into consideration the amount of time for you on social media, is it needed? If obviously not for research purposes or for actually self-improvement, then obviously, and even with that, you want to spend less time on social media and more time experiencing the world, interacting with others. Just getting off social media for a period of time has a huge implication long term.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So yeah, Doc, I absolutely love how you broke down all those small different nuances and how dopamine affects the body. And I know I have a couple studies, but I think I don't want to be the point we already made kind of deal. So we can move into the next segment, the rise of AI fitness influencers. And this is even a little more scary, in my opinion. So if anyone has been following Gary Vee, he actually made this prediction, probably over
It's been a while.
months, year or so.
Yeah.
To where he said that a majority of influencers online will be in form of AI or bots of some sort. Obviously, there's even AI generation influencers right now, like little Michaela, who actually have millions of followers, which is unbelievable. First off, they never age, they don't sleep, they're always able to perfect each post to have as much engagement, human engagement as possible. So I guess when you look at this, long term, if you want to have a space in this field, I think you have to know how to potentially use these AI influencers and yourself to a certain extent and have a human touch to it. I think people are going to start seeing
I think you're only going to mess your life up if you follow these things.
Yeah.
You're truly removing any bit of human interaction anymore. The fact that we now are going to heroize or put these things on a pedestal and they're not even real. My gosh, I don't see how that is any bit healthy in your life to follow something that isn't real. I don't know. That's just something that I'm going to be not doing ever. But it's just crazy to think that this is going to be a huge problem in the future.
Oh gosh, I'm sure a big part of it is going to be coming from them. This person accomplished this way, while another person accomplished this task in this way, but they themselves never accomplished it or had
Right.
the experience thereof. That's, I think, going to be another disassociative factor, even into the dopamine cycle, into the engagement with others. It's just another loophole
It's
that we'll
not
have to
real,
navigate.
right? So everything that they say has zero backing because it's never done it. It's a piece of code. You have influencers who's actually been working out 5 to 10 years and they've put in the sweat. They know how these things should work versus some AI bot telling you something and now you're listening to them. I don't know. It's mind-blowing.
No, absolutely. I think there's certain things that AI can help with. We use AI to help us put and save time for scripts, for finding areas of research, but a lot of it's still putting everything together and then delivering it with life experiences, with past emotions that we've come up with and that we've experienced.
Relation, connectivity to it.
Absolutely.
But also knowing that it makes errors. And so
Yep.
we always have to fact check the AI. Trust me, we've checked, always make sure to check their articles. It's funny, AI will give us fake articles out of nowhere.
weird.
And we're like, what? What? Why are you making up articles? We don't want that. We just want you to go find one that's already on the internet. Why you have to? There's millions of articles out there, and you're making stuff up. Like, why? It's just funny. It's funny how it works. Yeah.
Yes, and that's where watch yourself as social media changes and adapts. And if you feel like you want to get into this space, don't necessarily have to put yourself as an AI individual or replicate yourself as an AI online in life. Create this personalized videos. Yes, they may be poorly edited. Yes, you may not have all the facts. You may pronounce something wrong, but we're all humans. That's the more interaction or engaging side of things that I think people need in this day in life.
Yeah. Raw, unperfect.
Yes. Yep.
For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that touched a lot of different areas quite well today. From social media, we looked at how pretty much social media hijacks our dopamine, AI influencers, misinformation is rampant throughout the whole social media. I think there's a few things for people at home to pay attention to. First off, pay attention to the amount of time that you spend on social media. Is it something that you need to cut down on, which most people would say yes.
For sure.
And then finding these different habits that you can find yourself doing over a period of time, and then probably stop tracking them for a day. See, do they naturally ingrain into your system over a period of time, and then just keep following up in that cycle. Turn off notifications and experience life.
Yep.
Yeah.
Seriously. I know a lot of people that I follow who are human. Trust me, I know. Tucker Carlson actually doesn't have social media, but he posts to his channels. But he doesn't even have social media, and I see that more commonly with some other individuals who do still want to stay relevant and have their podcasts and stuff, but they have eliminated all social media off of their own, and they just have a crew manage it and post for them, but they don't have it themselves. And I've literally thought about that. If I didn't have to, I would. I seriously would.
Yes. I like that idea. because it's just time for me posting on personal side outside like the podcast, the clinic stuff. It's just, it's a lot. And then obviously you have to weigh the family aspect aside of things too. It's just,
absolutely,
it's a lot.
Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Please rate, review. This helps us grow. Subscribe so you can never miss an episode. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. And please, if you want more deep dives like this, please let us know, DM us so we can at least understand what topics you enjoy, or if anything in this, obviously this episode was awesome, please let us know so we can continue to give you guys what you want. So until next time, guys, have yourself a great day.
Disclaimer: the content provided in this health podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast is solely at your own risk. The creators and hosts of this podcast are not responsible for any actions or decisions you may take based on the information presented.
Thanks for joining us on The Functional Code. For more evidence-based health insights, subscribe, rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, your journey to a healthier you begins with understanding the functional code. Until next time, stay well, stay informed, and embrace the science of living well.